Welcome to the Peaceful Pop-Up Podcast. I'm Ravi, your host. Together, we'll slow down, breathe, and explore grounded fatherhood with greater peace and presence. I'm grateful you're here. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Peaceful Pop-Up Podcast. I'm your host, Ravi Rothenberg, and today I've got a very special guest. This is energetically feeling like episode 1 of season 2. If you're new to the show, welcome. And if you've been here for past episodes, thanks for coming back. As always, an inspiring transmission is about to happen. And today, sitting across from me, a special guest, Michael Whitaker, also known as Whit. I'll be addressing him as Whit. And Whit, it's great to have you here in the studio.
So excited to be here, Ravi. Both to be on your show and just to be in this space and to have the time to spend with you and the audience talking about things that I think are really important right now and taking time out of our busy days to really go deeply into that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your being here. Whit and I know each other from a men's circle here locally in Boulder that we frequent. And I think any man that is courageous enough to show up in men's circle is a man that I want to know deeper. And every time that we're in that same circle, Whit is always creating something that is inspiring and edgy and innovative and also deeply relevant to the work that I'm so passionate about in the fatherhood space and in being stewards of our families. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, I'd love for the audience to get to know Whit. Now, I know you have an impressive background. You have a PhD, a colorful career. I'm sure lots of hobbies and interesting things going on in your life. But what we like to do on this show is introduce you in a really specific way. Okay, so we're going to go through a journey called Head, Heart, Hara. This is an adaptation of an exercise that I learned from a woman named Erin Weed. Shout out to Erin if you're listening. But I've evolved it in my own way, and it's really been a framework that I've used over the last almost decade. It informs a lot of how I move through the world, and I love meeting people in this way. Are you ready for an experiment?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Cool. So head, heart, hara. You're going to start with your hand physically on your forehead. That hand on forehead somatically reminds you that that's where you're speaking from. You know, and in our world, I think so much of us operate from the neck up, right? We live in a very heady mental society. And I think it's important to also honor that. Okay, so when you speak from your head, you're going to have about 45 seconds to speak from this place. And when you're speaking from the head, you're just speaking the facts about Whit. I don't want to hear how you're feeling about what's happening culturally. I don't want to hear what you want in your life. Really just give us the facts, who you are, where you're from, what you do for work, your family constellation, some of the basics, as if you're at a networking event and answering that question. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right, hand on your head. And when you start speaking, I'll start energetically timing.
First and foremost, I'm a father. I have a wife, Jen. I have a daughter, Dakota, who's 15. I have a son, Jasper, who's 12. They're my world. They're the center of it. By day, I work as a strategy and innovation leader at an international consulting firm. For the last several years, I've been leading the AI transformation for that company, ICF, and seeing the disruption that's happening in the world around us. By night, I have been trying to engage with parents, schools, educators, students around some of this disruption and helping them to navigate it with greater confidence. I'm a coach. I've spent a lot of my life coaching teams, coaching individuals, mentoring individuals. I was a coach in Ultimate Frisbee that led teams at the international level several times, our national women's teams at the under 24 world championships, and also our senior women's beach team. In college, I won a national championship playing Ultimate Frisbee. So I'm an athlete, played very competitively in college, continue to play men's softball now. And so I think my world, work is what it is. And I enjoy the intellectual challenge, but I am grounded in home and family and athletics and sports and pushing myself. And I tend to be restless and constantly trying to grow.
Amazing. Let's pause there.
Okay.
Take a breath for the headspace. Amazing. Yeah. And what I love about the headspace too, I learned a lot about you. We have some things that I'd like to double tap and go into.
Yeah.
We won't dwell on them so much on the show, but I also played Ultimate Frisbee competitively in college on like a club team.
Okay.
But I have deep respect for anybody who's really gone deep on Ultimate. It's one of my favorite sports for a lot of reasons.
It was 5 years, the center of 5 years of college for me. Played it after college, met my wife through Ultimate, led multiple teams.
Wow.
Huge part of my soul and my core, and the roots of who I am came from that community.
Wow. Community. Yeah. Wow. The Ultimate community is really unique.
Yeah.
I think on a lot of niche sports like Ultimate, rugby, men's softball, like there's just a bond that develops that it's kind of unparalleled.
You can't replicate team sports.
Yeah.
And what you go through with your brothers when you're out there on the field.
Yeah. Ultimate's so good. Very cool. Very cool. Let's drop down into the heart space. So now from here, hand on the heart, you're going to speak from what do you feel? And you can literally fill in the blank I feel and just keep filling in that blank. But let us into a bit of your more emotional world in this moment.
I feel momentum in a space that I've been working hard at for many months, with lack of clarity perhaps on where I was going, but with a commitment to keep moving. My mantra last year was just paddle, just take the next stroke, and we can pivot and figure out what's next as the movement continues. I'm feeling that there is great disruption in the world around me. And I feel that I am not satisfied watching disruption happen without getting involved in some way that I feel like can help to shape a better path through that disruption for multiple circles, my closest circle, my family, my core team, but also the community around me. And to the extent I can, the larger community that I may be able and have the privilege to interact with at various points, and anything that I can give it to that community is of value.
Beautiful. Yeah, let's pause there. I love that. Your family is your core team. We're definitely going to go deeper on that statement. That's really noble. All right. Now that we've honored the head, we've addressed some of our feeling space, what's alive there, a place that we don't get access to very much at the Hara is a Japanese term for your like energetic center. This is at the core of your being. If you could have it all, what do you want? What do you want for yourself, for your family, for the planet? Like whatever's really alive when you tap into, my energetic center. What do I want?
I would say my Hara, and I'll equate it to when I feel the most fulfilled and when my energy is at the highest, is when I feel like I'm engaging with other people deeply in a way that is having some sort of an influence on their path through the world. And that can be still a path that is authentic to them and is grounded in who they want to be, but that through my ability to interact with them, I unlock something that they may not have seen in themselves or seen as a way through a challenge that they're facing. There's nothing that fulfills me more. It's why I coach. It's why I mentor. It's why I wrote the book. It's why I do the podcasts. Is the feeling that I can send ripples out, and I may never see where they end up. They may just dissipate, or they may cause an impact that I never realize happens. And then occasionally the ripples bounce back and refill me with energy as I hear the stories and the impacts that occur from that. And I've had a lot of that recently with some of the work I've been doing around the AI disruption, and it just fills the cup and motivates.
Breath for that. Yeah, I think that's what's so incredible about being of service to something greater than yourself without needing to get that validation or that ripple to return. Just knowing that you're putting out something of benevolent value that hopefully touches the lives of many. Yeah. And then that rare but unique and special moment when it does come back and they get to have that exchange with you and you get to really feel the impact.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wrote a book a couple of years ago now called Ready to Rise, How to Find Your Path to Peace and Purpose. And I was at a gathering with some friends from like high school in my hometown. And one of my buddies called me over and was like, "Hey, Ravi, I want you to meet my wife. She read your book and talks about you a lot, but you guys have never met.
Yeah.
And that in person, just like it really hits different.
One of the things that we'll talk about the book, but I also started a Substack around helping parents navigate the AI transition and be able to better shape the impacts it'll have on our work, our kids, and ourselves. And there was a post I wrote last week that was about the guilt we aren't talking about, that the emotional weight our kids are carrying around this. And I personally know of at least 20 families that had conversations with their kids around AI that they wouldn't have had otherwise because they read the post.
Yeah.
And those kind of things, you never know where it goes from there, but the initiation and the energy that I put out that in some way impacted the energy that they brought to their family, and then is giving their kids a path to have a different relationship around a disruptive technology within their home and with their family in a hopefully more positive way. That's what fulfills me. That's what drives me.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go deeper on that.
Okay.
So you've got the Substack, writing frequently about what you're experiencing in this big AI transition. The book, Family Through Lines, Discover Your Timeless Compass for Parenting in an Uncharted World. Take us through the initiation on your end personally that led you to this body of work that's moving through you.
Really, it started early last year. I was at work. I mentioned that I'm leading the AI transformation for a large company. And so I was, after ChatGPT came out, seeing how disruptive this technology was likely to be, even if it wasn't quite ready yet, and projecting into the future. And what I sensed deep in myself was that there was a lot of the world that wasn't recognizing the degree that this disruption was coming and how fast it was coming.
Yeah.
And I got concerned that in not recognizing that, they wouldn't be able to shape it, and it would be done to them instead of them having agency over how this appeared. And from having kids, I realized how we've looked back on the social media era and the introduction of iPhones many years later, and recognized impacts that we didn't want to happen, but we also didn't actively shape to not happen because we just didn't recognize them too late. And my fear was that we were heading for the same thing with AI much faster.
I know you have such an intellectual disposition. Can you quantify it for us? If you were to give a magnitude of like how many times more disruptive will AI as it matures and evolves, even in the near term, versus what we experience with social media?
I'm not even sure it's quantifiable. Like it's many multiples. The thing I want parents listening to this to understand is, with social media, it was really a relatively gradual introduction, and you could control the environment.
Yeah.
You could have your kid not be on a phone. You could say, I don't want you to use a particular app. You can't do that with AI. AI is going to be infused in every part of our life, in every learning environment. It's going to be baked in every system you use. It's going to be on personal devices. It's going to be in school. It's going to be at work. And so you can make choices about how quickly you engage, but you can't really make a choice to opt out the way you could with, or try to do with, social media. And so the effects are going to be not just broader, but faster, orders of magnitude faster. And what I realized earlier this year was like, now is the critical time to make an impact and to shape that. It's not 6 months from now. It's not a year from now. It's not 2 years from now. It's now. And so on the body of work side, I didn't really know where I wanted to start. And I went on a mountain biking trip with our good friend, Mike Idala, and some of the people from the men's circle that you talked about. And on the drive home, I was talking to Mike and Jake about some of these ideas and the things I'd been thinking about with AI and parents. And they're like, you should write about it. And my response was,
I don't think Mike Idell said you should write about it, but.
Oh yeah, sorry. Mike doesn't use the word should. They said that what I was saying would be valuable to share with others. And then the question became, what's the format? And how do I do that? And I don't like social media, quick hit headlines. I'm not an alarmist. I'm actually, for the audience here, I'm not anti-AI. I use it every day. So this is not in any way an anti-AI podcast.
And in many ways too, I just want to like really qualify who I'm sitting across.
Yeah.
He's like the innovation, director of innovation for an international consultancy group focusing on AI. Like this is your everything.
I wake up every day doing it.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
And so, I decided to start. I preferred to write than to, I was happy to do podcasts, but I didn't have a platform necessarily for that. I was like, I can just start writing. I'm just gonna start writing. I'm gonna put things into the public square. I'm gonna try to.
Now, do you write from your personal voice, or do you use an AI companion to craft your posts and other creations?
So it's a co-creation process with AI. I have a voice that I have the idea, and we can get into, but when I have waypoints for how I use AI, the things that I hold myself to, that make sure that I protect my authentic self in those interactions, and then feel like I'm the one directing where this is going. And one of those is own the start, own the finish. That's one of my waypoints. And so like, it is core to me that I will own the start. It's my idea. It's my message. It's my experience that's being shared in the blog or in the Substack. I may use AI to craft some of the language in the post to get me to a 70 to 80% where it goes from, I have an idea, I have the messages, I have the call to action, I have the things that I'd like my audience to take away. Now let's take a first pass at how that shows up on a page. And then own the finish is, it ultimately has to be my voice, my words. And I've gotten more sophisticated, and we could talk about that process over time. I think probably early on, it was largely all me. And then as I got more of a body of work, I was able to train an AI to be truer to my voice and to the messaging, as opposed to just what would come off the shelf, and use that more as a editor and a co-creation partner, as opposed to just a casual prompt and saying, give me a Substack post. So I've just organically built the Substack, since June 1st. And, I've got, I don't know, just under 300 subscribers to it, which like feels great. And over time, the focus has shifted. I started probably a little bit more in the workspace where I was comfortable in doing it every day. As we got close to my kids going back to school, I started to pay attention to what they were going to experience when they were re-entering school this year in a world that had been was being significantly disrupted by AI. And so my posts started to shift to that, and my engagement in the community started to shift to that, starting with, we'll call it a post, which was back to school with AI, the clarity crisis, which I went and actually gave testimony to the BVSD, our Boulder Valley School District Board, on this. And I said, can any of you on the board explain our AI policy in 30 seconds or less? Because if you can't, you've already lost the kids and the parents and their ability to align with you. So I mentioned earlier the mantra of just paddle, and where that really came from was, with what I was experiencing at work, the analogy I used was, I'm in a boat on a river, and it's nice. Like, the river's relatively calm, the boat's nice, the scenery's lovely, but I could hear a noise in the distance, maybe rapids, maybe a waterfall. Couldn't really tell how far away it is. Wasn't sure if it was on the main branch of the river or on a tributary, and whether I had to do anything to get away from it. But sitting in the boat without moving felt like I was just going to be swept along and at the mercy of whatever was to come. And so the commitment I made to myself was to just paddle, to take the stroke, to do the next thing, because with movement comes the ability to turn, pivot, bring other people into the boat, row faster, slow down. But when you're just sitting there and being pulled by the current, it can feel quite powerless.
Yeah, no, I love that metaphor. And also I feel both sides of it, like the sense of overwhelm that could lead to apathy, and like, this is so beyond me, I'm not going to do anything as a parent. And then also like the hyper over involvement, like I need to know everything and be on the cutting edge, which probably isn't sustainable for.
It's actually impossible. It's not even sustainable. Like, it's moving so fast that, and I think we should go into this more too, like, parents have to get comfortable leading their children, or at least guiding their children, in a space where they themselves are not an expert, which is really hard.
Let's double tap on that. something you said earlier about you address your family as your core team.
Yeah.
You've been a team player for a lifetime, a coach, a mentor, a guide. So how do you show up as a leader to your family in this new uncharted territory?
So one thing I think a lot of people listening to this to recognize will be that parental instinct that I want to be able to draw my kids a map. I want to be able to tell them, here's the path to follow. Here's where the dragons lie. Don't go there. Here's the boundary in the world that you're trying to navigate. And I think the first thing I had to accept is that the world that they're in, I can't draw a map for because it's changing by the week. And so instead of trying to just script the journey or draw the map, I had to come up with different ways that I felt like I could consistently show up for them in a way that was authentic to me and authentic to our family's values across an impossibly diverse set of issues that didn't exist when I was growing up.
Yeah. Well, you make this really tangible for me and for the audience. So take me through it. Are you like sitting at the dinner table and like clearing space and literally making a map, going through the book and the prompts? Like, how do you not only build that relational rapport with your kids who might rather be on their phones or playing, doing other things? Like, what is literally the setting of you engaging in this conversation?
So there's really three separate elements to it. And there's the family through lines, which are core, and they're all in the book, but
Okay.
the family through lines themselves. There's conversation non-negotiables, which are what are the things you do to create the climate for a better conversation, regardless of the topic.
Yeah.
And I think, we should go deeper into this, but most parents, when they're facing a challenging conversation with their family, spend about 90% of their time trying to come up with the perfect script.
Yeah.
And rehearse what they're going to say, which, no conversation survives first contact with your kid. Right.
Yeah.
And so you spend a lot of time there. They spend 10% of their time trying to figure out when to fit it in to a busy schedule.
Yeah.
And almost no effort creating the climate that is likely to make that conversation go better. Yeah. And so we should talk about those because I think those conversation non-negotiables are very important. And then the third piece is conversation types. When you're talking to your kid, you're not having one conversation, you're having at least 5 types.
Yeah.
And I think starting to understand what type of conversation you're in and be more intentional about what kind of conversation you're in and understanding what kind of conversation your kid thinks they're in or needs to be in is another important part of this. So we can really start with any of those. Before we get into those details, I might share the starting story of why I wrote the book versus the Substack as well.
Yeah. And I want you to give light to the story because I think it's a really meaningful one. And I want to also just layer on that, to the listener who, again, I'm so confident that you're brilliant at creating these frameworks to make it really tangible and accessible for anybody going through this journey. What I also want to invite in and layer on top of that is a really simple framework that is my guide. And I'm curious how you think these could play together, but there's a simple triangle, and it's the triangle of regulation. Okay. So when I'm having a conversation with anybody, especially with my children who are likely dysregulated, or if it's a conversation that's got some conflict to it, it's a dysregulated environment to begin with. And so we have to come into a state of safety and like nervous system regulation so that we can reason with each other, or actually we can relate with one another. So when we're regulated, we have the ability to relate. And then when we are relating and really sharing our unique worldviews, now we can reason and co-create something meaningful.
Yep.
And so again, there's just a part of me that that's what I want at the core of my being is like for people to understand nervous system regulation, to show up in their relations, especially with their family core team, from a place of we're regulated and it's safe to be here and engage in dialogue.
So I'll tell you where that shows up here.
Yeah.
And it's one of the family through lines is proven plays. So every family has something that works for them when they feel like when a hard conversation goes well, when they walk out of it feeling stronger as a unit, when they've solved together as opposed to fought against each other. They have a pattern that they use. They have something that their kids recognize deep in their core as something like this is what our family does when we do it well. And, for younger parents, there's an opportunity to with intention set those.
Yeah.
For the more experienced parents, there it's maybe an opportunity to discover or rediscover what yours are. And I think what you do in that space, like that's a proven play for your family. I have a similar one, which I talk about in the book, which is we had two parts of it. One was we would always change the physical location when the emotions got high on a conversation, and we would go sit down so that we weren't trying to push through it.
Nice.
And we would said, and the words I would say to my child were, I'm here to listen to you, but only say what you can say without crying. And if they started to cry, I wouldn't yell at them, but I'd say, wait, only what you can say without crying. Wait, only what you, so I wouldn't let them power through with escalating emotion on these topics. It was, can you regulate? Can you come back? I wasn't using the same words you were, but can you come back to a state where we're going to have a conversation? And the words I used was, let's have a conversation to trigger that. And then we'd go move.
Are you also creating space for the tears, for the emotion if that needs to happen?
I'm not forcing them to talk without, like, before they cry.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try to solve it through tears.
Okay. Respect.
So the idea was to try to get back out of the emotional reaction into more of the logical and we can solve this reaction.
Yeah.
And the other thing we would do as a proven play was we would introduce concepts they didn't understand in order to trigger their thinking brain as opposed to their emotional brain. Nice. So like when my kid was 2 years old and he was upset, I would say, do you need a strategy? Dad, what's a strategy? Well, a strategy is how we solve things together, hard things together. Yeah, Dad, I need a strategy. Right. And then we were back in conversation. Okay. It had moved from
versus
I'm upset and can't handle this to, oh, well, we just need to come up with a strategy.
Yeah. And that also creates this, like, we're in this together. Exactly. It's not Dad versus you. You didn't do anything wrong, but let's repair and resolve.
And that's actually one of the conversation non-negotiables. We may jump around a bit in this conversation, but you and me versus the problem, not you versus me, is one of those non-negotiables. Now there's some ways that you get to that point, because that's easy to say, but there's a few things that I think are important precursors to make it so that you can authentically be you and me versus the problem instead of you versus me.
Now, Whit, is this something that you grew up with, that this is part of your family through line that you're bringing to your family, that you're the leader of, or is this all stuff that you had to learn and infuse into how you operate today?
Some of this stuff I felt as a child without it being said, or I think being done intentionally by my parents. Nice. I certainly have a deep connection to my parents and to my grandparents. And I can look back and see how they showed up for me in various moments and the dynamic that they tried to carry into the house. And there are certainly some elements of that I tried to bring into my family. And I'm not going to pretend for your audience that I was intentionally when my kids were 18 months old saying, this is going to be a proven play I'm going to pull on later. It just worked, right? It worked. And I was continually trying to find interesting things that felt like they yielded the environment and the feelings and the outcomes that I was looking for as a parent and to cultivate in my kids. And those change as they grow. But there were through lines between them, things of like, we still do it where we trigger our kids' thinking brain by introducing a new concept. My son was, he's 12 now, right? So you get screen time battles and things like that. And I built him a course on, mastering your digital brain using an AI online course tool. And I said, read this, like look through this course so that we can talk about what's happening in your mind as you're feeling these different pulls. And then we can decide how do we solve this thing that you're feeling that isn't your fault, but is something that society has set you up with. But I want you to understand what's happening so that we can have a deeper conversation about it. We did the same thing with my daughter around her desire to have Snapchat and saying that, she made a frustratingly logical case for why it was needed to be connected at school, which wasn't part of my childhood. It wasn't necessarily what I wanted it to be, but it was real for her. And so I had her listen to a podcast, 90 Minutes, Jonathan Haidt, about, from the anxious generation, just what are we worried about with this? Like, why does it matter? What particularly do some of these tools do to teenage girls' brains and some of their sense of self and how they value real life friends versus online friends and all those elements. And I was like, just listen to this, like, and then we'll continue the conversation. I'm not saying yes or no, but I want you to share a reality with that mom and I are in.
Yeah.
And it took her 3 months, but then she came back and she had actually done her own research, and she found an article about why Snapchat was the best one to start with as a learning experience on social media compared to some of the others, and had done research into what other risks parents might be worried about from it. We had a much deeper conversation than I want to be on Snapchat, we don't want you to be on Snapchat.
Yeah. Wow. And that's Mike. Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Kudos to you for giving her that opportunity, and to her for going deeper and like making it her own.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your kids, based on their ages, 12 and 15, they've been, interacting with social media and technology for long enough that it's very much a part of their worldview. And you're a steward of this work around just like, intentionally using it, the boundaries that you're putting in place, the conversations that I would say so few parents are having. So you're clearly a leader in just embodying and living that ethos. If you were to look at this in hindsight as like let's call it a 5-year experiment in the last 5 years with your children that are now teenagers, and almost a teenager, what's the result? What are you finding in terms of how are they shifting their relationship with social media, technology, AI? What are you seeing?
One, I think it's important that even within 5 years, it's shifted and it's faster and it's more pervasive. So my daughter going through it and what she had in 6th grade, now in 9th grade, that pathway is already different than what my son, who's now a 6th grader, is going through.
Totally.
And so the landscape is not stagnant. It continues to change. I'm very proud of my daughter. I think she's done a fantastic job of managing the pulls of social media, the pulls into her phone, the constant vying for her attention and presence that is prevalent in a distracted world. By no means is it perfect. Like, we have regular conversations around it, but I think she's done a remarkably good job with it. I think we tried to, here's the analogy I use is when we teach kids to drive, we have a year of very structured onboarding because cars are dangerous in many ways. They're powerful, they're empowering, and they're dangerous. And so we spend a year where we put kids through classes. We only let them drive with a parent by their side. We don't let them put friends in the car for the first several months after they have their license, so that they gradually gain the ability and confidence to use a powerful technology well. And we don't do much of that with social media, if any, and certainly not with AI.
Yeah.
And AI being probably the most the most powerful cognitive technology ever created. And so what we tried to do with my daughter is replicate that to some degree in the way we could. So we started her with a flip phone that you had to press the letter 2 3 times to hit C, right? Like the old school. And then we moved her to a Gab phone that was a little friendlier for texting. And then she got into 8th grade and all of her teammates were on group chat, and we're like, okay, to be in the loop socially, this is important to you. We weren't ready to do social yet, but we were going to get her more access to that community because that community was important to her. And we had to share her reality that that's how they interacted. And then, she made the case that Snapchat was the best learning social media because in some ways it's more authentic than the others. There's fewer filters. It's a little bit more raw, and almost the kids use it a bit more like texting. And so we had to listen to her on that, and we had to come up with an agreement. And one of the things I talk about in the book is how agreements are not the same as contracts or expectations. And so we worked towards an agreement that of how she would use it, of how we would try to control the power of it pulling her presence into a phone. We didn't want her to be halfway in her phone when she was with real life friends. We wanted to have times of the day where it was not an option to go into the phone, and so that her brain had a break and could just be present in the real world while still respecting that she was going to want to engage with that. And that's the year we're in right now, is really this kind of like going alongside her almost like we would with a learner's permit for driving with social media.
Yeah.
And it's been, like I said, it's not perfect. We're having regular hard conversations and check-ins around it. But
you're having conversations, I imagine a lot of the listeners, if they don't have a teenager themselves, they're overgeneralizing that teenagers are probably just glued in their phone, totally not receptive to a intentional conversation with mom and dad about technology use. And here you are being so intentional and so in stride with her development while tracking, but ultimately surrendered to the ubiquity of AI and technology. So I'd love to hear from you. What advice would you give to the listener who is struggling, who maybe is a couple of years behind and just feels like they've totally lost their teenager to technology and AI? Where do you start?
So I would, I mentioned 5 conversation types.
Yeah.
There's 2 that I think parents really need to lean into if they feel like they've lost their kid into this space. And it's discovery and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so discovery is really, it's about understanding their reality in truly understanding it, not in the way that you think it is, but in the way they're experiencing it. And then connection is sitting with them in that space to understand like how they're feeling about it and how they're navigating it. And so I did this with Dakota when we were starting the Snapchat conversation. I remember when we did it over dinner, because some of her earlier justification for why she wanted it was, oh, it's how people find out about parties. And it's just like how everybody talks all the time. And it's like, well, aren't you going to find out about a party from your friends anyways? If it's like one you really want to go to, somebody will tell you. And she's like, Dad, it's the other part of it. It's how kids flirt. In our day, it's, maybe you went up and talked to somebody and you got their number, and she's like, that's not how it works in high school. If you're interested in somebody, you add them on Snap. And if they add you back, it's enough of an opening that you can talk to them in real life. And I was like, okay, like I didn't understand that was your reality.
Yeah.
But I hear that, and I understand that the social side of high school is important to you. And it's important to us that you experience that in the way you want to. And so that became one of the things that was like, okay, this is something that I can't replicate through other means, because this is the way that my peer group operates. And we need to, as parents, acknowledge that that's part of her reality, important to her. And the follow through on that story is her current boyfriend she met because he added her on Snap and she added him back.
See, I told you.
And then they talked in real life, and he's a wonderful kid, just fantastic, respectful. They're having a great relationship, and it wouldn't have happened. Like, I don't think it would have happened if we had said no to Snapchat, because they wouldn't have naturally kind of been in the same circles or interacted.
Yeah. Can I share with you what's coming through for me? This approach feels so logical, but also compassionate. There's like this logical compassion that comes through with how you're relating to this. And I think, again, I'm just going to shine a light on you. So rare, right? To really meet and discover where she's at, connect with her in that place, and then being open to whatever that means, right? Instead of being shut down of like, oh, I don't really want you going to parties, and I definitely don't want you having a boyfriend, but like, you're like, no, I want you to have the experience that you would like and deserve as a modern high schooler.
So one of the conversation non-negotiables I talk about in the book that I think is really important here when you asked for advice is, I've said the phrase a couple times. I haven't said it in terms of conversation non-negotiable. It's start with a shared reality. If you don't have the same reality as your kid going into these conversations, it's really hard to have a productive conversation. And sometimes there's foundation building to simply understand their reality without trying to solve for their reality. And then the second one is speak the tension. And this is the one that gets skipped a lot. And this is the precursor to you and me versus the problem instead of you versus me. These conversations are hard because there's a legitimate pull in both directions. So with Dakota and Snapchat, you want to be socially connected, and we don't want your presence constantly in the phone. Right? And so there's a tension there. All right, our challenge, you and me, is how do we solve for this tension? How do we enable you to be socially connected without your presence always being in the phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge to solve. The challenge is not, are you going to be on Snapchat? Are you not going to be on Snapchat? When are you going to get Snapchat? You're not getting Snapchat to a certain age. It's how do we get you on a path that lets us solve for that tension, and then manage the tension and pay attention to it as we go.
And what guardrails have you guys agreed upon to?
So she has a 30-minute per day limit on Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
So she can be on it. She can engage with her friends, but she's got to choose smartly when, so that, she isn't going to sit there and when she wakes up with 200 messages, she's not going to go read them all and clear them all. She's going to look for the messages that are of a certain type because they're color coded by type. And she's going to use her currency well on the ones that matter and when they matter. And this is one that's challenging because schools don't do a great job of enforcing cell phone bans, but we've emphasized bell to bell. We really don't want you on your phone. Like when you're at school, be at school, be there. So we're open to some of your use at other times in an intentional way, but we want some dark periods during the day so that your brain has a chance to reset and be present there.
Wow. Impressive. And I think too, that'll set her up for life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beyond high school, as she enters, whatever education looks like beyond high school, and maybe a workforce, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But like the ability to be focused and present for the task at hand and not in the phone for 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 plus hours per day. Yeah. Any tools that you use specifically for monitoring her usage on the phone?
So here's where I think it's interesting, because and I talk about in the book, core principles is the second one of the through lines. Mm-hmm. So core principles are, how do you want to show up as a parent solving things with your kids? So it's not about honesty or kindness. It's more deeper principles that guide your decision making as a parent with some consistency over time. Mm-hmm. And so one of them for my wife and I is do the right thing when no one's watching is a core principle, which sets for us that we can't default to surveillance as our primary way to navigate through this. Whew. And that's a choice we made, right? If we want them to do the right thing when we're not watching, we can't set up an environment where they're only doing the right thing because we're watching.
Yeah.
And so it's not trust without verify. They're still, they're on the same iPhone plan as my wife, and we can have a real conversation around screen time and other things. But that's not the primary way that we have the conversations and drive it. So we try to
trust over surveillance.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's trust over surveillance and monitoring with verifying of that trust. And the trust, we talk about this frequently with our kids. Trust is a pendulum. And the more that you show us we can trust you, the larger, the wider range, the longer the rope, the wider the range. And if we start to suspect that you're violating that trust or hiding things, then the tighter it gets.
So good. Yeah, really. This is amazing. Tell me too, I'm curious, let's set the kids aside for a moment.
Yeah.
You and your wife, how much energy goes into like, hey, we've got to be on the same page before we present to them, versus like, is there already alignment? Are there times where you guys are not on the same page with some of these core principles and ways of operating as a family unit? What does that relational dynamic look like personally for you?
That's a great question. It's a constant balancing act with my wife and I. We had very different childhoods. Mm-hmm. And so we come at, like, she was, and I don't know all of the details of it, but she was much more of a rebellious child than I was. And so she knows everything that our kids might try and get away with and has seen it all, has seen it from her friends, has been in those environments. And so she's going to default to a little bit more of, I don't know if that protection is the right word, but just a savviness of the world of like what it's really like out there, that she's going to be on guard to make sure that either our kids are not walking into unexpectedly, but also that how they might be trying to get around our things, or where they're maybe not aligning with what we've said we would do, and they're starting to deviate from that. She's got a very finely tuned radar for that.
Sure.
And I think I was not a rebellious child. I'm much more of a rule follower my whole life. And so I come more from an assumption of, if we talk about this stuff, they're largely
They're gonna
follow it. And so I think that's just a constant, very healthy dynamic between my wife and I of, she will push rightly when and have that sense of, hey, like they're drifting and we need to have a conversation and pull them back and not just trust that they're staying on course, because that could be naive if we do that, and they could get into trouble. And I think where I push the tension in the other way is not defaulting to punishment or to a crackdown where it becomes they're only doing the thing because they're either afraid of punishment or want reward. And can we get them to intrinsically want to do the thing? And it's constant, like it's constant and very, like, I think it's very healthy. In the book, one of the things we talk about that I think helps is timeless values, which is, what are the things across all these different conversations that you want to come back to over and over again, that you hope will be the core of what your kids carry forward with them to navigate a world that's unpredictable and disrupted. And so we have 5 of those that we talk about in the book. And I think those are things that we can always come back to and ground the way we interact with our kids to, regardless of the specifics of the situation. And then how much do we need to crack down on them versus how much leeway can we give them, and how much can we forgive them for mistakes versus, if we never punish them, do they just assume that there's no consequences for anything, and that goes the wrong way too? That's just a constant, I think, push and pull that we navigate.
Yeah, the polarity that you have with your wife, the rebellious versus the rule follower, the good cop, bad cop, in a way. Yeah, I can see how that would be really harmonious.
And even less than bad cop, it's savvy cop.
Yeah.
Like she's street smart. She's very street smart, much more so than I am.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a real value that she brings to the conversation, is that savviness and street smart and the experiences that I may not have had. And then, I will often play that, or be more of the good cop or assuming, and that can, I'm sure, get me in trouble at times of being a little bit naive or taken advantage of. And I think it's healthy that we have that balance.
So cool. And for me too, I'm really interested just to keep following your journey, because the age difference and the genders of your children are very similar to mine. So you're 12 years ahead of me. And wow, what things will look like in 12 years from now is just so unfathomably advanced. But I'm here for it. I think that's the part that both scares me and excites me, that deep unknown of, man, what will the world look like? But that's a whole nother conversation. We've referenced the book a number of times. It's sitting in front of me. It's a really nice just guide and compass for parenting in an uncharted world. I think you've done a really brilliant job of teaming up with AI to create something that is both tangible and expansive for the family that really wants to lean in, right? This is not for the family that wants to unplug and just surrendered. We can't do anything. We're apathetic. We don't have time. Life's too busy. This really feels like a companion. So thank you for your creation.
Yeah. I mean, I think the core premise of the book is that so many of the challenges our kids are facing these days simply didn't exist when we were growing up, whether that's social connection via a phone in your pocket, the disruption of AI, school lockdowns, graphic content on their phone at the swipe of a screen, the pathway from college to get a job to you're safe in the future feeling less certain perhaps than it did when we were growing up. And so nobody prepared us as parents for how to talk about those things. Our parents didn't tell us about it. Our schools didn't teach us, because they didn't exist. And so what the book tries to help parents do is using values that are authentic to their family. So not copying mine, but using some of the reflective questions and maybe my examples to help discover their own, identify some of these core through lines that are the connective threads that keep their parenting together across all these diverse challenges, and then ultimately help their kids navigate when they're no longer by our side. And there's, gets pretty deep. There's questions at the end of each chapter that I think are helpful for parents to reflect on. But there's also detailed conversation guides, kind of like we've talked about today, which is, how did we actually do this with our kids, right? Like, what was the Snapchat conversation? What did we say? How did it progress? How do we talk to our kids about AI as a study buddy, and how you navigate trying to use it in a positive way that enhances your thinking and doesn't slowly degrade who you are and you lose yourself? How do you help your kid recover from the trauma of a lockdown, something that you never experienced as a parent and can't really possibly understand, but you have to show up for your kid in that moment. And so I think that's ultimately, like you said on the book, it's not a script. It's more of a relatively quick, easy to read, but hopefully powerful discovery journey that a family could go on. And, either for younger parents to be intentional with what strands they're weaving early that they may not need when the kids are 3, but they might need them when they're 12 or 15. And when your kids are older, there's strands that you've already started to weave that you may not recognize. And can you pull on them to engage deeper or re-engage in areas maybe where you've stepped aside because it felt like you didn't understand, or it was moving so fast. But in stepping aside, you're hoping that you're either letting tech influencers or peers or others guide your kids into it.
Wow. No, really brilliant. And what everybody says about parenting and raising a family, that the days are long, the years are short. So what my personal takeaway from this is, I really want to sink my teeth into this book and carve out it's almost impossible just to get time with my wife uninterrupted. But I think, making the time to really owning what our principles are, and then from there, using this as a companion. I think that's my homework. That's my big takeaway, is that there's some gold in here. Where can people find you and the work that you're putting out in the world?
So for the book, the website is familythroughliness.com. And if you go there, you can get a little free digital guide to some of the core concepts in the book. I'll just email you a PDF. It's not a bot. It's me. I'll answer your emails. Like, I want to connect with parents in this space. My Substack is Navigating AI Transitions with Wit. If you're really interested in the AI angle of this and what's happening to our kids and the schools and at our work, that's the place where there'll be a bit more content. If you can't remember the title, just Google Mike Whitaker Substack and you'll find me. The one message I think I want to leave your audience with is the time to engage with your kids around AI is now. We've talked a lot about social media and Snap. Kids are carrying a deep emotional weight around AI. They see the world around them being disrupted. They know it's a powerful technology. A lot of them think they're using it well, but aren't sure. When they do choose to use it, they feel like they might be undermining their thinking. But again, they're not sure, and there's not really parents or adults around them that are giving them much guidance. A lot of times schools are banning it, but they still have it on their personal devices. Their peers are using it, so they feel like they have to use AI to keep up. And they're actually dumbing down their work to avoid being accused of inappropriately using AI, because the rules are scattered and they don't know what the lines are, and the teachers are doing the best they can. But it's this really messy
blurry.
world.
It's
blurry. It's messy. It's lonely. There's not a lot of safe spaces for them to talk about it. There's not a lot of clear guidance. And there's a Substack that I wrote recently that the title was, "With Unimaginable Empowerment Comes Unprecedented Personal Responsibility." And that's the era we're heading into with AI, where you can learn and build anything, including all the way down to grade school kids. They can really unlock and be in their curiosity and go learn about anything. But the institutions that we are used to guiding us through disruption and transition are behind, and they won't catch up. Like, they will not catch up. It's moving too fast. They're not designed to move this fast. So whether that's the schools, the laws, your company, and waiting on your learning and development program to tell you what you have to learn, it will always be behind. And so you have this, I can go learn and build anything, but nobody's going to tell me what I have to learn and build. And that's a really hard space. It's hard for adults, and a lot of adults are really going through this unsettled transition. And it's one of those rare moments, I think, in history where parents and kids are really experiencing a similar space in a similar way at a similar time. And it's not that the it's like parents can have conversations with their kids around this, and their kids will recognize the feelings, and they may share some of those feelings, and you can share your own experience and thoughts with it. And there's, it's not going to be one of those things where you talk to your kid about this and they're like, I don't understand. I can't relate to what you're talking about. They can, because they're in it, and they're craving these safe spaces to just have conversations. These aren't about strategizing or coming up to agreements on use or standards or restrictions. It's about understanding their reality, what they're feeling. Are they feeling guilty? Are they feeling excited? Are they feeling empowered? Are they feeling lost? And then being with them in that and helping them navigate what is only going to continue to accelerate as a disruption. And it's an incredibly powerful opportunity for parents if your kids are anywhere in the middle school to high school to even college, to have a really real deep conversation around something that matters and matters right now.
We're going to put a bow on this. And the sentiment that came through for that is that now is the time, and there's an opportunity for connection.
Yep.
Instead of feeling in fear and overwhelmed and unsolvable, that this is a moment to lean in and
it's lean in with curiosity, not authority.
Yeah.
You don't have to know what to tell your kids about AI. This isn't about directing them. It's about asking questions and understanding what moment they're sitting in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the message I hope parents take away from this is don't let an uncertainty about being an expert or an authority stop you from having the conversation, because your kid needs the conversation.
Whit, thank you for your transmission, for your work and your service to humanity, truly. In my head, I can think of at least 5 families and specifically parents that I'm excited to send your work to. And ultimately, when this episode airs, I will be sending this episode as well. So yeah, if you're listening and you right away thinking of family members, coworkers, people in your community that could benefit from this conversation and the guideposts that Whit is putting out into the world, please take a moment just to share it. Because those ripples are ultimately what will be the change that we wish to see out there. So thank you, Whit, for being on the show. And
thank you, Ravi. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And we'll have a good rest of our day.
Sounds great.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Peaceful Papa Podcast. May the wisdom you found here ripple into your being, your family, your community, and the world at large. I look forward to being with you again soon. See you on the next episode.